Neeves Knives, I'm Jared, and today we have the full review of the EMPEDC Large Nymble with the sheep's foot blade. Now the pre-order will open up February 19th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. There will be 8 different options available, including a mocha tie version. Now I will link everything I possibly can down in the description, and just remember though, I only had this for a few days, so I had to do all my sharpening and testing in a very short amount of time. So just put that into consideration during this review. Let's get into it. Bang! All right, let's get into this. Now, you'll notice that the big one is quite a bit larger than the little one, which I do like. Now, you can see that it is about the same size as a Shaman. The Spyderco Shaman and this knife actually have a lot of similarities in their grip and, just the shape of the handle and everything. I feel that it's about the same size, very similar. Now, there is one big difference, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the knife overall, I do really like the little details, and I do have some complaints, and we'll get into that in a moment. But there's little details that I do appreciate, like how far the jimping stretches up the spine. I can get a lot of control nice and close to the blade, which I do really, really like in a knife. I love the swedge up on the top. It not only helps with reinforcement strength behind the tip, but it also just looks damn good. Now, we'll get into the action because this knife is a hyper performance action knife, meaning like there's 150 different ways to deploy it, especially if you have an imagination. You got the flipper tab, you have the front flipper, and which you can do all kinds of tricks with. They're all pretty equally easy to do. Then you have the reverse flicking hole. Now you also have the thumb flicking hole. Both are equally as easy. A lot of reverse flicking holes are not as easy with the thumb. This one is. It's even enjoyable to slow roll. Then you also have the fuller, so you can hold all the way down by the tip and reverse flick it if you want to. And all these things are equally as easy with the left hand. So if you're a lefty, this is the way to go. Now the clip is not reversible, but you have the ability to use it just as easily as me right-handed. And I mean that seriously. Like I don't feel any real difference between my right hand and left hand, aside from the fact that I'm not left-handed. And the detent, nice and solid. Now I do notice on the drop it's been breaking in slowly, but it's very drop shutty, but this is glassy. But it's broken in. The detent tracks had a chance to break in. This one still has, and I've oiled it and everything, but it does feel a little bit gritty. Not gritty. I can tell the detent ball is breaking a track into the finish. So it just is what it is. It'll break in, no problem. But the detent, when you unlock it, the lock bar access is pretty good. Easy to get to. They didn't give you a big cutout, but it's very easy to get to. Now the detent is nice and early. However, when you hold up really high on the lock bar, you will stop it and it will mess around right there. So what you have to do is you have to find that placement where you disengage it at, and once you find it, you'll get it every time, because you'll notice like right where it's at, and then you don't have to let it drop down to your finger if you don't want to. Now you can let it drop all the way down to your nail and hit your nail and then finish it off, but you don't have to, which is really nice. I tend to kind of just like let it go halfway in between, and I just kind of stop and then move my finger. But either way, both of them are easy. It's very easy to control. The action is phenomenal, just really nice. I even like disengaging it like this with my pointer finger and then slapping it shut, but it is nice and drop shutty. Now, the ergos and cutting. This thing cuts really good. I do notice the geometry is a little bit better than the small one. Now, the small one had really thick geometry, which in return, being a small knife, makes it to where it doesn't cut the best. Now, it does cut fine. It's not like it's horrible, but it's a small knife with thick geometry, right? Now this one, because it's stretched out, the geometry is much better. It feels a lot thinner up here on the top of the flat grind, because this is a flat grind. It does feel a lot thinner, and it's stretched out. Then mixed with the great ergos you have, you're going to have a ton of leverage into your cuts, which, you know, just by default is going to not only make it feel like it's cutting better, but it is cutting better. So very comfortable to cut with. It does cut really good. If you're holding back here, you can get a full 4-finger grip without a problem. Cut just fine, but you will catch things on the choil if you're not careful. So you're going to probably want to keep your finger up there, you know, and prevent things from hitting that choil. Now, the blade shape is just designed for utility cuts. You can see, because of the blade shape being a sheath foot blade, when I put pressure down, all the pressure goes to the tip. Even if I'm back here and I'm putting pressure down, all the pressure goes right to the tip, because the shape and geometry of the blade with the spine, you know, is all connected going down to the tip. So it's just naturally putting pressure. So doing utility cuts or detailing work or anything like that, it's going to work really, really good because you have so much leverage down into that tip. Now, the fuller, you do get some resistance a little bit when cutting. It's how fullers are. Now, the fuller's not really sharp, but it is deep. So since it's so deep, you're going to get a little bit of resistance. Not horribly. It's not nothing really bad, but it is there. And you do get a little bit of resistance going through stuff. Now, the hardware is T8s all the way around. Love to see that. Love to see that. The clip works great in and out of the pocket. No issues. I'd love to see the cutout on the inside, but it's not, so I'm not going to complain about it. It doesn't bother me. It works just fine in and out of the pocket, and it carries really good. The coating seems to be holding up pretty good. It's not like I got to use it extensively, but from the cutting I did do it with, you know, it seemed fine. Tape residue was getting, you know, did create a lot of traction after it built up, but that's just normal. So not an issue there. Now let's talk about sharpening it. So I did sharpen it. I wanted to get it on the stone because, you know, with a factory edge, right? And this is one reason why I like to sharpen my knives in full reviews, because everybody's going to eventually sharpen their knife. Now, a lot of people sharpen their knife right when they get it in order to make the knife cut that much better, because most edge angles, not all, but most edge angles that come from the factory are high edge angles. They don't cut nowhere near as good as, you know, one done at home, where you can lay back the angle and you can decide what type of edge geometry you want, whether you want a really tough edge or do you want a high performance cutting edge, right? So most factory edges come really high. They're a little bit more tougher, less slicey, more tougher. So I wanted to lay back the edge angle and see what type of cutting performance I would get out of it, and also feel how the steel felt on the stone. And, you know, a lot of little details, even just like how long the fine edge lasts, all those details. Now, I didn't get to do extensive testing, you know, like I'd like to, but I put it on the stone. I did sharpen it on my VENEV diamond infused resin bonded diamond stones, and the steel felt good on the stone. It sharpened up really good, no issues. I went through all my progressions. Holding the angle was really easy. This is a very easy blade shape to use on a stone. You know, just holding your angle with this, with not only the handle, but the blade shape. It's easy to do this type of blade shape. There's very little belly. You don't have to lift too much with your elbow. So it's pretty easy to get the entire edge. You know, it's just really easy. It's an easy blade shape to sharpen. Now, when it's mixed with some good steel and a good heat treat, it's even better. And it felt like it was pretty good. Now, as I moved my way through my stones and deburring it went really well. I finished on a 3/2 micron, which is about 5,000 grit. Put a mirror polished edge on it. The polish came out really good, and it deburred very nicely, and it came out with a very sticky edge. Very, very sticky. So I was really happy with the way it sharpened. Now, after that, I did some more cutting tests with it, you know, so that I could really feel how it cut after that. And yes, the cutting performance went up. Now, I didn't get any clips of me using it after that, But regardless, it cut a lot better, far better. Even the utility cuts were so much better. Now, I did experience a tiny bit of microchipping up here at the tip, but I don't think that that's saying anything negative. I think it's just because I was doing utility cuts and there was wood underneath the surface. Now, wood usually doesn't affect edges too bad, but hey, it is what it is. It's not that big of a deal, and it's so minor, most people probably wouldn't even notice it, but I do notice it just right here on the tip where I was dragging it across things. Now, I did strop it back up, and it seemed really responsive to a strop. Really happy with that. Usually, not always, but a lot of times that can mean that it's got a pretty good heat treat when it can be responsive to a strop. Now, I did use a diamond compound. I used gunny juice. Gunny juice and a good leather compound, or a good leather strop with gunny juice, diamond infused liquid, basically. You just drip it on the leather, rub it on, and it worked great. Brought the edge right back, brought the stickiness right back, because, the stickiness started going away after, just like with any edge, especially if you lay back the angle, it's going to be a lot more stickier, not necessarily coarse or aggressive, but really sticky, where it almost feels like little serrations biting your skin when you touch it. So that wound up going away after a little bit more cutting after I sharpened it. So after stropping it, stropped back up, the bite came right back. I was really happy to see that. Now, going into some negative things. Let's talk about some negative things. So, one, I do like the jimping up the spine. It's really good. The jimping is really good. It gives you a lot of control and all the grips, and it works good for cutting. However, for the front flipper, I wish it was a sharper jimping. Now, I noticed on the little one actually has sharper jimping. If you notice this jimping, let's see if we can get it to come up. If you notice the jimping on the smaller one, it's actually a little finer than on the big one. So that is something I did notice. It's a little more slicker, and I notice I slip off a little easier than on the little one. Now, that one, it's finer jimping, but two, with this coating, I'm sure it knocks it down quite a bit too. Just with the stone wash, it'll knock down all the little edges. I would prefer finer jimping, sharper jimping that grabs you back. Now, another thing, and I think this is super important for any companies doing front flippers out there, and I constantly keep saying it, I feel like a broken record at this point. You have to go around the front flipper. You don't go up to right before the top and then stop the jimping. The jimping should land on the top or go around. You should have at least one jimping up on the top, at least one. Because then when my finger's up here at the peak, it grips me. It actually grips me. Now, that doesn't have to be like hyper aggressively sharp, but you want your jimping to have a little bit of, you want it to be sticky. You want your finger to stick to it, so when you do the deployment, it actually goes with you. And if you happen to grab the top of it, there's no worries because there's jimping there, and it's not just slick. You're not just slipping off of it. Now, does that mean the front flipper doesn't work good? Of course not. The front flipper works great. You guys seen me already doing all the deployments. It works fine. This is just a preference thing with jimping. Same thing with the flipper tab. It's almost like there's no jimping there at all. I don't know if it even needs it. It's kind of like the smock where it really doesn't need jimping, but I still want it. So this is just slippery jimping. And like I said, I'm sure the stonewash knocked it down quite a bit. And all these things are subject to change a little bit, by the way. This is a prototype, guys. So don't take it, take what I'm saying too strongly. But I would prefer it to be just a little bit more sharp so that when I do grab it, not sharp to where it's irritating, not sharp to where it's pokey, but just to where, it kind of holds on to you when you deploy it so you don't feel that little slipperiness. Now, the frag pattern on the face feels great. That's all knocked down too, kind of like the jimping, which I really do like on the frag. Feels really good. It's not extra sharp. It makes it to where the clip works great in and out of the pocket, but on the jimping, it should be a little better. Now, obviously, you're going to get, like I said, a little bit of resistance going through things with a fuller. It just is what it is. If you want a fuller, that's something you got to live with. Next thing. Now, let's bring up the Shaman. So, if you notice when I'm gripping the Shaman, my fingers are nice and tight together, right? Which is really good. You like that. It really gives you a lot of control when your fingers are tight together like that. Now, on this, they're not. They're separated quite a bit. And I notice that. I feel my fingers separated, and I can't help but want to put them together. But then, for me personally, when I do, I can't get a good spot with this finger, at least not comfortably. So I tend to either hold it right here with my pointer finger on top of this part, or I separate them. Now, is it that big of a deal? No, not really. But I just can't help but notice that that's one thing I kind of feel and notice right away, is that my fingers are separated quite a bit. I did notice the grind was slightly thicker on one side. It's a prototype, so I probably shouldn't even be bringing that up. But yeah, not that big of a deal. I noticed, like right there, you can see how it's kind of smiling just a little bit. That could have been me, but I didn't feel that this side was a little bit thicker anyways, and it's possibly the way the plunge grind goes down to the edge, but I could have put a little bit of extra pressure right there, seeing that I was freehanding, but I do think it was just from the twirl. On this side, I don't see it. This side, I didn't get that, but on this side, I did. But this side did come out a little bit bigger, and you guys probably can't tell. I can just tell because I sharpened it, and I'm talking about just the angle difference. Anyways, not a big deal. It's, like I said, it's a prototype. I probably shouldn't have even brought it up. But all in all, man, fantastic knife. I do really like it a lot. And I know it's going to be very popular. Now, I can't help but would want one right in between here, guys. Think about that. We got the large, we got the small. Where's the medium at? I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that'd be awesome. But yeah, I do like the knife a lot. Like a lot. The little nitpicks I have are just that. Very much nitpicky. And it's definitely a knife that I think a lot of people would love to have in their collection and can be proud of it. It's not only a good knife, but it's a good looking knife. It's it's fun to use. It's fun to carry. It's nice to carry. And that's another thing that I really appreciate about it is how easy it is to carry. It's a large knife, but the clip works great. So, I tend to like to carry knives that carry good. But there you guys go. I love you guys. Everything will be linked down in the description for you guys to check out. Peace.